Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. Now Fridays are usually the videos where I do racing stuff. This one's a little bit different. I'm trying to give you some behind the scenes stuff of what happens here on the stuff. Now this one might sound like I'm complaining a lot or showing a lot of stuff, but really the point of this is problems. What I'm trying to show you, and I know you want to see R&D stuff, and that'd be really cool. But what this video is going to be showing you is problems that the cylinder head guy deals with that you never even see if you're lucky. Some end consumers get past the buck. So if there's a problem, they just get passed it on and there's never the wiser. But I'm showing you behind the scenes stuff, that problems that are involving different products I've gotten. It won't be just this. There's several this week. And the things that had to be adjusted that the customer will never know what extra work went into it to make it right before they got it. Although I warn you, some companies don't. But anyway, let's just get started, and I'll tell you, and because it's been a rough week. Let's start off with this. So I ordered this head. I got it as a pair. This castings from a company which I won't name, but if you're smart enough, you probably could figure it out. Anyway, I ordered a castings, these, and it took about 5 months to get them in. Now these were hipped, so they're a special order anyway because it's the aluminum's denser this way and it's stronger that way. And anyway, because it took so long to get them in, as soon as they got in, I made a mistake of just assuming that since I opened one box, and I got this one, I opened the box and I looked to see if they had the right seats installed, because these are different, and the right guides installed. And beyond that, I was like, all right, cool. I only opened clearly the box that had this one in it. From that point, I sent it off because I needed to have the chambers CNC softened. So a different company does this for me. And I need to get him off to him because I know he's also busy as well. So I sent him off to have this done. He messages me and says, hey, do you want me to mill the heads? And I was uncertain about what he meant. And he shows a picture of something like this. But the thing is, you see that? It was actually here. Right there. So what you see here was all the way up to here. And I was like, no, don't worry about it. I spent a ton of money on this expensive mill. I can do it myself. Well, I got it back, and like I showed you, it was all the way up here. So I was like, oh, well, maybe it'll clean up with a few thousandths. Maybe I can just mill a few thousandths off, a few thousandths off the other head. Things will be good to go. Right now, I've milled 18 thousandths, and it's still there. Now, you would think, well, that's going to seal. No, it may not. This is the MLS gasket. This is that hole. This is the bead that goes around it. If I line it up right, that bead is still on the area. So I've still got to take more off. Now beyond that, I'm going to get a little worried because if I mill the head, look at the chamber softening. Now look at the other head. This is how it should be. Now did they mess up? No. When you mill the head, you're taking off the chamber softening because it's getting deeper. So it's removing that. So I was like, perfect. But it has to seal up. The customer cannot run it this way. So that's the reason why I kept milling it down. So then that meant I've got to resend this off. And that's when I started looking closer at the head because I noticed different things. See the seat coloring? It was different on these two, which I was like a clue something's up. But not necessarily, because sometimes you can just have solvent on it and it will discolor the seat. No big deal. But when I looked here, and I don't know if my camera's going to capture it, there's a black smudge right there in the port. And I know what that's from. Welding. When you weld aluminum, sometimes it makes a little carbon patch like that. So I was like, why would it be welded? And then I looked over here, and I hope you could see it. This entire register has been welded. The entire thing. So then I started doing more investigations on the head because I'm like, something's definitely different. So, because I assumed that both of the heads were exactly the same. I assumed wrong. For one, when I milled this 18 thousandths off, I then decided, I wonder if the deck heights are the same. What I mean by that is this deck on the head the same height as the other one? Because there are clues that give away that it's not. You're like, well, what would I look for if this was the case? The valve job. Now, if I look at this valve job, look right here. See how it doesn't really get into the chamber here? Let's look at the other head. There it is. You can see it going into the aluminum here, and I can see this ridge on the top part going all the way around. Here, no, and it's not as deep. So I was like, well, that's strange. I wonder why that happened. So then I decided I would measure. Here's how you can check deck height for big blocks. Hopefully this register in here is the same for each head. So you've measured from where that is to the top of this deck, and you measure on the other head, they should be the same if they're the same deck height. After milling 18 thousandths, this is still 2 thousandths higher than the other head, which means once I get to milling, that will be gone, hopefully. Okay? So there's one thing, and that explains why the valve heights are different. Because when you do a valve job, really what you're doing is you're putting up the machine, and when you cut the valve job, you're setting the height in relationship to the deck. So it might be, I'm just using these numbers, 20 thousandths down from the deck surface, bam. 20 thousandths down from the deck surface, bam. But the thing is, if the deck surface is higher, your valve job will be higher. So that's the reason why this valve job height was different than the other head, because its deck was higher when they decided to do the valve job. In other words, somebody dropped the ball somewhere and it didn't get milled all the way, or it might have cleaned that up. And because of that, things were different. The welding, that's the one that got me. Remember, this is a brand new head. I didn't order a Blim head, because you got to know something. Companies sell Blim heads. I do not buy or sell Blim heads, because you never know what you're going to get. And I'm not saying they aren't bad. I just don't do it. There's several people, and it's happened before, where someone will say, well, I can get this cheaper, Race Rights or whatever head you could pick from, cheaper from so-and-so. And they're Blims, which means there's something wrong with them, and then they just sold them at a reduced rate. I didn't order a Blim. This has welding in it, okay? So I was like, what's up with that? Why? Well, then I look at this seat, and I really want you to see if you can spot it, because you have to be able to, if you look at my disassembly video, the big thing is not seeing what's the same, it's seeing what's different. So let's see if you can spot what's different. I spotted it. Besides the welding, look at the seat. If I notice my top cut, see how much of the copper there is compared to that one? Very little. Much more. This is an oversized seat. I can tell also because look at the distance between. Look at the distance between. So what they've done is, I'm assuming, somehow there was a casting flaw in the register. That's where the seat actually sits. So they had to weld it up. And then to save effort, I guess, they put in an oversized seat, did the valve job, and then sent it out. Except for look at the valve job again. Now look at this one. That one's a different valve job than that one. So you're like, so? I'm going to do my own valve job on it anyway. But mine's a pretty aggressive valve job. But let's say I was doing a moderate one. I don't know if all the angles will come in on this seat. They may on these, but they may not on that. Luckily, I'm going with a pretty aggressive one and most likely will. But still. So you're like, well, what did you do? Because this head's different. So how do I fix it? Here's how you fix it. One, I called the company and I was like, hey, you never told me that this head was welded. So now, I mean, sure, I could port all this, fix everything that's wrong with it, which I'll tell you how to do it in just a second. Send it off to the customer. The customer would never be the wiser. I'm not that guy. I've already contacted the customer and he says, I'm leaving it to your judgment, which is great. But I would have liked to have known before the head came in. But anyway, they said, well, what we can do is you can send this back. And then what we'll do is we'll get you a new one made. And they said between 4 and 6 weeks, which really means between 8 and 12 weeks. I don't know if I'm going to wait that long. So you're like, well, how do you fix it? Well, the seats are already in. What I can do is this. One, mill this off till it gets to the same. Then mill, it's probably going to, hopefully at this point, once this comes off, they'll be the same deck height. Because I hope 2000s takes that off. Because then they're the same exact deck height. From that point, I'll put my own valve job. Well, actually, from that point, this head has to be resent off to have the chambers softened again. Because the chambers are now not the same as the other head. So after get that, send it off again. My own dime for shipping there. Shipping back. Cost to have it done. My dime. New valve job. on all of them, which I was going to do anyway, and hopefully start with this one and make sure it comes in before I do the rest. From that point, port, and it is what it is. It'll be as good as it could be. And the customer, if I did that, would never know that ever happened. They would never know. Now, the alternative, of course, is to get another head from them, which means I'll have to ship this back my dime to pay for shipping. They might give me a new head for the cost, so they just swap out the heads, but still they'll probably charge me shipping back again, my dime, shipping back to the company to have the CNC softened because the heads don't come that way. It's my dime on the shipping back and on the cost to have it done. I don't know which way I'm going to go, but regardless, I'm not charging the customer extra for something that's not their fault. Is it my fault either? No. Had I been aware of this beforehand, it would have changed everything. Now, you're like, well, that just seems like you're bashing one thing. This is just one problem this week. Let's go to the next one. Because you think it's just this manufacturer. You're so wrong. Here we go. Now I'm going to start going fast because I want this video not to be so long. I ordered this set of heads for a customer. No big deal. This heads I've talked about before. I always, every time I get this brand of head, I always check, have to do the valve guide sizing and then do my own valve job. The good news is this company's come a long way, and guess what? All the guides were checked and were perfect, so I didn't have to size them. Valve job was still bad. So I had to redo the valve job, and this is where things get weird. This is how I do them. I'll cut this one, this one, this one, this one. That's just me. Anyway, so I cut this one, got the right height, because remember, it's from the deck. Everything with your valve job comes from your deck height. From here down, got that height. This one was the same height, this one's the same height. Go to do this one. I bring it in and it should be at the exact height of all the rest. Nope, it's not even showing any of the angles. It took 15 thousandths further down before the valve job came in like it is now. What that means is when this head came to me, this chamber itself, valve job, was 15 thousandths lower than the rest. You're like, so big deal, what's the matter? What that means is this chamber size was different. I mean, cast chambers are usually a little slightly different anyway, but this one would be much more different. And here's another thing. What this means, if you were to check, do piston valve clearance checking, which I'd hope you would do, and you checked it on this cylinder, and let's say you were really close on your exhaust piston valve clearance, and you had 90 thousandths. Well, on this one, you might have had 90. But remember, this one's 15 thousandths higher, which means you had less clearance. So if this was 90, this one was 75. Now, all of a sudden, your engine blows up because the piston hits the valve, and it breaks off and destroys your engine. And you're like, well, I checked the piston and valve clearance. Most people only check it on one cylinder, by the way. You're like, I checked it, it had enough clearance, everything should have been fine. It was probably the valves, some cheap valves, and that's why they failed. When all along, it wasn't. So, I fixed this. The customer will never know, except for watching this video now, that the thing's been fixed. I brought it to this height and redid all the rest so they're exactly the same height. So besides the valve job sealing, helping flow, it has to be the same height so you have the same piston and valve clearance, the whole thing, and the chamber size stay somewhat close to each other. That's another problem that happened this week. So, and by the way, when I bought the heads, they were ready to go. That's the idea, not like they weren't assembled, but they had come already ready to go. You should be able to put your own parts in and go. And some people probably did that and were never the wiser. That's that one. Okay, let's go on. This is my sister's engine. As you can tell, I made pretty good progress on it, probably on the dyno relatively soon. But as I'm assembling it, I have to make the rockers line up. Okay, so you use the guide plate, and what you do is you have the push rods through with your rockers and you line it up. That's how you're supposed to do it. And then I came to this guide plate. Do you see a problem? Okay, the push rod actually rests right here. Notice how it's got a notch there and there? What it did is it caused the push rod to move too much, so it couldn't be where it needed to be. So I had to replace, because one was that way, another $25 for a whole new set, just so I could do this, so I could put that engine together. That was one thing. Also, on these cylinder heads, I had ordered the valve springs, retainers, locks, all that, and locators. I go to assemble the heads. The locators, the package containing locators is one shy. It has 15, not 16. So luckily I have more in stock, so I had to take apart a whole nother set to take one out. $45 lost. I know you're like, why don't you just contact the manufacturer? They'll send you other ones. One, they're going to take at least 5 days. Two, they're going to charge me anyway for another set, because that's what they do. They charge you for one, for the new set they're sending out, because they don't trust you, which I don't blame them in a way. But then they'll give you a credit back once they get the other ones. And that credit might be a month later. The other thing is, usually they still charge you for shipping. And then you have to argue with them like, why are you charging me for shipping when you sent me not enough product? So that back and forth wasn't worth it. So I was like, whatever. So $45 lost. Now, like I said, it probably seems like I'm griping a lot. But remember, if you're putting the engine together, think about it. I do a ton of these. This is just 1 week. I'm not even done. Next thing. So I got these Champion spark plugs, and I know someone's going to knock me for these. They used to be really cheap, and they worked great. You know, most of my Engine Master engines actually had this exact spark plug, the Champion 12 RC12YC. So I got this, and I know you guys didn't know this, but did you know that's an angle plug? You're like, no, it's not. It's straight. Watch this. I'm going to unscrew it. By the way, the paper towel's on the ground because my son's supposed to be down here to clean it. Watch the spark plug. Whoop! Did you see it? It moved that way. Watch it move back. It moved back that way. Did you know it's angled? Me neither. It was new to me. I thought they came straight. Yep, that's just one thing. So, more spark plugs. Not the only thing. Let's go to my next thing. I ordered a set of valves in. The customer will never know that I had to do this. I ordered them special. I had them cut down a 1/600 valve down to 1/575. See if anybody can spot what's wrong with the valve. If you said there's no seat angle on it, you're correct. And you're like, so you could do that yourself. Why are you complaining? You could do it. True. Just more time that I also don't have. You're like, well, you're making a video. You got time for that. True. Granted. Now, I contacted the guy who sold me them. It is totally not his fault. And I don't want you to think that it is. Super great guy and everything else. It wasn't his fault. It's the company who makes them. Not mentioning any names. Anyway, luckily I still got them back. So I'm going to put the angle on them and can use them. But if I was like, well, I can get it done today, it won't happen. They have to be your face now. So another problem. Now, back to the reason why I even did this video. A lot of times when you're watching YouTube videos and you see me and you see all the stuff that goes around, like with the cylinder heads and stuff, and you're like, wow, that guy, things just go so smooth. I'm here to tell you, there are so many problems that go wrong before that product gets to you that you're never aware of. Because if a business is good, they'll fix them all before you ever get them, and you're never aware of how much difficulty went through. Because it seems like you should just get stuff and it'd be easy to go and no big deal and off with your day. It should be fine. It's just not that way. And for those that are getting parts and you're just doing your own thing, really examine them, because you really don't know how it is. So a lot of things can go wrong. That's the reason why I did the video. So, because a lot of companies finish these things up, send them out to you, and you never know. And I'm not blaming one company, because every company has their problems. They make mistakes. Things happen. So that's the reason I'm not bringing up any names. Just things happen, you know. But I wanted to give you this video, and if you stuck around in the end, I want to show you one special thing that's not a gripe at all, but I'll show you. So for the next 3 minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit of tech, because you listen to me rant or give you some information, I guess. But I want to show you one thing. This is a little tech thing for you. This is my sister's motor. Let me take this tape off. I wanted to show you this because I'm kind of cool. It's not neat, but it's kind of a tech thing. This is an Edelbrock Performer EPS manifold. If you were in like some of the factory stock, pure stock classes, well, I think factory stock, dirt track, they have to run this manifold or the Performer itself. I've used this manifold before, and the reason why I chose it for my sister's engine is because she really doesn't, she wants it to be calm, and she really doesn't care what power it makes. But her biggest thing is hood clearance, and this was the lowest one. Now the tech thing I'm showing you is I cut out the divider. And I didn't just cut it out, I cut out parts of this, and then I actually went in here and ground to make this radius better. And the reason why I'm telling you this, because the reason why I did it was my sister has an 88 Firebird that she refuses to put a cowl hood on. So whatever carburetor or fuel injection, which is going to be the Sniper EFI, is going to bolt right on here. Now, if you've read anything on the internet, you'll know that putting a Sniper EFI on a dual plane, some people have issues. And my thought is in this is fuel distribution, because a dual plane, usually like this one for sure, has a divider wall that comes all the way across. And I know it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but a lot of movement's happening in the plenum itself. So even though this runner right here really would like to grab, maybe say from the barrel here of the Sniper, or here, or vice versa, wherever. When you have it blocked off like this, I can see why people have issues with it, because you're not exposing the Sniper to enough of the plenum to get the air and fuel that it needs. So probably not an issue for like the Performer RPM air gap, where it's got the little notch here, because there's a little space for the air to travel back and forth along with the fuel, and it helps balance things and they kind of work. However, this one I took out even more because she's not going to run a spacer, because another way you can fix it. So because of that, I took out more, because I want to try to avoid any of those issues with having the Sniper EFI on this. I also do believe this is going to help some of the top end power, because it now has more plenum volume slightly, and it's more exposed. It should make a little bit more top end power. However, I'll be surprised if this engine makes 400 horsepower. Now, if you watch my videos about the salt heads, they're really good. If I change cam and intake, this thing will make over 5. That's just not what she's going for. But anyway, so I thought I'd show you that, give you a little thing there. So if you got a dual plane, you'd like me to do this, it's not that bad of a deal. But I really think it helps on the Sniper stuff. Carburetor really won't care so much, because it's a different animal as far as that. But I know I've heard of people with dual planes having issues, and I believe it's because of that. Once you expose the plenum to all the barrels, hopefully that will alleviate it. But this thing will be on the dyno hopefully soon, and you'll have some numbers. All right, thanks again for listening and watching. Take care.